Welcome to Living Chassidus. Together, let's live the Chassidus we learn. Welcome, everybody. We are here today with our life skill series, and we are starting with financial education, organize your finances, a human approach to money. We have the great schos to have Mrs. Stephanie Genkin, and I am so lucky that a really good friend of both of ours. So she introduced us. I went to one of her talks and I loved it. I couldn't stop smiling the entire talk. And I said, that's it. I have to ask her if she'd be willing to speak the Living Chassidus. And we're so lucky. So Stephanie Genkin is a certified financial planner. She's a fiduciary, and I think she's going to explain what that means, which is really good to know. And she's a registered investment advisor in Brooklyn, New York. If you want to hear more about her, you can go to www.stephaniegenkin.com and you can check it out. We're starting a two-part series. So tonight, Wednesday night, we are starting the first part. Then we're going to process that information, think about it, make it really personal. And then Sunday night at the same time, starting, Zoom opens at 7:45. The program will begin at 8. The same Zoom code and passcode. That'll be part 2. So thank you so much, Stephanie, and we're so lucky to have you.
So great to be here, and thank you for inviting me, Michal. And I'm actually glad, usually I like to do this in person, but I'm kind of glad tonight that we're on Zoom because I'm a little bit under the weather. But I really am happy to be with you, so I expect to pep up a lot as the conversation goes on. And I have to say that I want to just start with this story because I think it's really telling. When before I became a certified financial planner, I was a news producer at CNN, and I worked in financial news part of the time. So that's where I got a lot of my, kind of education and grounding from. And I remember being out with a few friends from CNN after I had made the transition and become a financial planner. And I remember in the course of a brunch one day, a friend who I had worked with for a long time said, well, you could ask Stephanie that question. She's all about money. And I was really struck by that because anyone who knows me knows that I'm actually not all about money. So I'm telling you this story because I think because I speak about money and I've studied financial planning, that people assume that I'm about money. I'm about people. I'm about helping people shape the lives they want to live. And money is just a tool to get there. Money is not the object. So I want to just set that straight that I'm the last person who's constantly thinking about money for money's sake. I really focus on people, and money is just a means to help people fashion and build the lives they want to build. So I that's a theme that runs throughout, and it's the context of which I speak to my clients or groups. So if it was just about money that I'm speaking about, to be honest, it wouldn't be that interesting for me. I'm interested in people, and I'm interested in bettering people's lives. So the screen is kind of funny right now. When I made the PowerPoint presentation, I had no idea that there would be blue and pink smoke, so I apologize if that's distracting. I thought it was funny at first, but it doesn't seem to stop. When I advance the PowerPoint, it will go away. So Michal mentioned that I'm a fiduciary and I'm a certified financial planner, and these are probably pretty new terms for you. So I just want to unpack it for a minute. Certified financial planner is somebody who takes a fiduciary responsibility very seriously. What is fiduciary? It's a legal term that means that we are required ethically and legally to act in your best interest. And that surprises a lot of people because they assume that if they go into a bank and speak to an advisor, or they go into an investment place and speak to an advisor, like, of course the person's going to give me advice in my best interest. Who else are they going to, act in the best interest? And the fact of the matter is that I would say from the last numbers I've seen, fewer than 90% of people who hold themselves out as financial advisors actually are fiduciaries. So, who are they acting in the best, you know, manner for? Their companies. So, you do have to be careful about who you take financial advice from. Not all advisors are created equally. So, I just want to make one point, um, to say that if you ever do work with somebody in the future on one of your financial goals, and this may be for somebody, one of the most important things I'm going to say tonight is you always want to ask a person who you may hire to help you with your money two questions, and they're very simple. One is, are you a fiduciary? So you're basically asking them, are you legally and ethically required to act in my best interest? Any answer that's not yes is no. So I've had people call me from banks and investment firms, and they want to help me with my money, and I say, "Are you a fiduciary?" And they don't say no, but they don't say yes. They say, "Oh, well, we just want to help you. We're trying to help you understand how to reach your goals." That answer is no, and no one will lie about it. They just won't say yes if they're not fiduciaries. I would say that if you asked a doctor if he's required to act in your best interest while treating you, and he or she couldn't say yes, you'd probably leave the office and not come back. And you should do that when with regards to money as well. So that's one question. And the second question, and it's not a rude question, is how do you get paid? Because some people get paid by commission, some people get paid hourly, that's me. Some people are paid a percentage of the money that you've asked them to manage, and others get paid by a monthly subscription. So you want to make sure that the way the advisor charges aligns with your goals and your ability to pay for service. Typically, typically commission is not fiduciary because they stand to gain more money if they sell you a more expensive product. So that's just educating yourself. So when you go out there, maybe in the future, and someone says, "Oh, I can help you with an investment plan," it's just very important to know those two things. I'm going to pause for a second before I advance the slide because I've just given you a lot of information on a rainy evening at 8 p.m. And I know you're just getting into the mode and you're easing into it. So if anybody would like to ask a question at this point in the chat box or unmute, feel free to. No, no takers yet? Okay. Usually it takes, I notice in my talks that are live, it takes one brave soul to sort of break the ice, and then everybody has questions. And I love that because we open up the door for others to speak. And when you ask a question, so many other people are going to learn also. And I think this bears saying, um, there are no stupid questions. Please do not phrase anything that you would ask tonight of this may be a stupid question, because if you have a question, everyone else needs to know the answer as much as you do. And we're all going to benefit from you asking. So please feel free and empowered to do that. And this is a friendly group and nobody's judging anybody about anything. So I added this because I wanted to ask you, is it okay to talk about money? I mean, here I am talking about money. And yes, I do this professionally, but what do you guys think about this? Do you think it's okay for friends to sit together and talk about money in some capacity? Is it useful? Is it something that's not worthwhile? Is it, you know, should it only be done in certain circles? What do you think?
I'll share what I think.
Please.
I'm Yosefa.
Hi, Yosefa.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice,
I
nice to meet
think
you.
I have to say personally for me, like growing up in a household where money was just like thrown around and taken advantage of, and finally getting married, and my husband who grew up in a family that was much more financially responsible, I needed to communicate with other people about money and like how to handle it and talk about my concerns, and it always became so emotional, and just talking about it helps a lot.
So glad to hear that because sometimes people feel that, and money is emotional, there's no doubt about it. But often people feel that because it's emotional, that it can raise their anxiety level. And I'm really glad to hear that you feel that, talking about it is a way that, makes you not feel anxious and helps you. So I think that's really terrific.
It took a while to get to that point.
But you got there, and that's the thing that matters. And it's going to be different for everybody. And so if somebody has a different experience and is willing to share that, we really welcome that also. Anybody else? What the research says, what the surveys that I've seen in women's magazines or in various other locations is that about 50% of women find it difficult to talk about their personal finances or money at all. And less than a third of women have any kind of financial plan. And when you get to a younger age group, which I think captures most of the audience tonight, for women 25 to 34, fewer than 10% actually have a plan for their money. So it's really common to sort of want to run away from this. And I know that many women are raised to believe that, oh, well, it's not polite to talk about money. And I want to just say that it depends on how you talk about money. I mean, someone who would brag about money, that's really not okay. That's not a comfortable conversation. But I remember early on starting to have conversations when I started working at CNN with people about money, whether it was the company retirement plan or about investing. And I also found it very liberating, but I also found it educational to understand what other people knew and pick up advice from other people. So, in fact, this weekend on Sunday, I had a visit from a friend that I had worked with for a while at CNN Financial News. And we learned a lot about money by talking to each other, and it helped us be better producers, but it also helped us to understand what we're supposed to do with our money. And that was before I went back for education to be a certified financial planner. So, if you have a good friend or people who you share values with, or maybe have a different experience with money, this could be really helpful, to open up a conversation. We don't want to be nosy and intrude on other people's privacy, but the more we talk about it as women and share, the more we can help each other, but also learn about, ways to think about money. So, not to go all feminist on you, but it's really important for women to know something about money and not to defer it to their husbands. And what the research shows, because remember, I am a recovering news producer, so I come with, data and information. Five times more women live paycheck to paycheck than men, which means that they're living without a savings account or an emergency fund. And this is important for everybody, but especially, families. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. And another thing we see is that when women are good savers or they're working on their money, they hold most of it in cash and they're not investing it either because they're put off by the jargon or they're not sure how it's supposed to go or they're afraid to ask for help or they think it's really dangerous. And so the problem with holding most of your money in cash is that long term, that means over time, your purchasing power is reduced by inflation. Inflation is a hidden enemy. Right now in our economy, inflation is very low, so we don't see a lot of price increases for goods and services as we live through this pandemic. But what we will see in the next couple of years is an increase in prices. And if you're sitting with your money in cash, it's not growing. The interest, whatever you'll get at the bank, is not going to keep up with inflation. So when I'm teaching at NYU, I teach an investing fundamentals course. I always challenge them and say, what is the only long-term investment that's guaranteed to lose money? And when I'm in class and in the room with them, I turn to the blackboard and I start writing down everything that they shout out. And I don't stop until somebody guesses the answer. And they're stunned by this. How could cash be the only asset that loses value over time? And that's because of this hidden enemy called inflation. And you could just understand it in your own lives if you've been, for instance, taking the subway for a while. What did you pay for the subway 10 to 15 years ago as opposed to what it costs now? That's inflation at work, okay? So cash is important, and I often say when I'm speaking that cash is queen, but one must also think about growing money for the future, and that's investing. Okay. The other thing is that, when women stop working for a while after having children, maybe they're staying home and they're taking care of kids, they'll also see that their pay is reduced. So we need to make more, of our money if we're going to be paid less and step out of the workforce from time to take care of our families, children, aging parents. And well, men and women find money stressful, but what the research supposedly shows is that women say that money is the number one source of their stress. So I wanted to put it out there that we need to have these conversations and we need to think about at least some sort of planning for our money, some framework from which to understand money. And I want to just say that if you hear that in the background, I don't know if you can hear that. My cat, who is 18 years old and partially blind, is calling me. So I might have to put him on my lap or he'll get hysterical. He doesn't really like Zoom. So I apologize if you hear him in the background. Okay. Here's the thing that we go out, we work hard for our money, and we have lots of different goals, but we only have one paycheck and we have to stretch it. So I want to talk tonight about what to do with it. And when you're single, it might not seem such a big deal. Maybe you're living with friends, maybe you're living with family. And so you come home, you have money, you have what you need, and you don't really think it's a big deal. But when you get married and start to have a family, you'll see that it's really important. Some of the considerations we're going to talk about tonight, and I hope to answer your questions too, that, how do you make this money cover all of your goals and the life that you want to lead? So I want to just make clear that money's not about having more than others or having things to show people how much you have or how successful you are. In fact, most people who have a lot of money, you wouldn't know it because it's sitting in their bank account, their investment account. People who actually have a lot of money don't show it. It's people who want you to think they have, a lot of money that they actually don't. They're using outward signs to signal to you how well they're doing. Those people tend to not have as much money as others who aren't showy. So just keep that in mind, that things aren't always as they appear to be. I want to pause for a second and see if anybody has any questions before I move on. There's a great book that was very popular in the 90s called The Millionaire Next Door. I think it was a book of the late 90s. And if you ever see it, I would say that you don't really need to read more than the first chapter because the whole premise of the book is there. And that millionaires don't spend their money in ways that middle class people or lower middle class people who want to show off their wealth spend. That millionaires are more likely to drive older cars and have, fewer suits or fancy things. They tend not to have the best house on the block. That's how they've made their money, also by being frugal and careful with it. But the other thing I want to say, and I think this is where we can all have an interesting discussion, either during this talk or at the end, is that, money is really also about values. And when you find a partner and you're going to get married, this is really part of the values conversation. Do we want our children to go to college? Do we have an expectation that we would pay for most or some of college? How do we feel about debt? Is some debt okay and other debt is not? Some people feel very comfortable carrying credit card debt. Other people don't. Some people think that debt is evil, but they're willing to take a mortgage to buy an apartment. These are things that are not necessary. I don't want to put judgments on them that they're bad or they're good. It's you want to be on the same page. You want to share those values um, about bigger things and how they manifest in money with the person that you're going to marry. This is a very good way of keeping shalom bayit is when you're on the same page about these fundamental things, right? Will we help family through retirement? Will we, do we value investing for our future? Or do we even have a concept of it? So these are things that really are fundamental to building a family. There are 5 main areas of money that I'm going to talk about tonight, and I'm probably not going to get too deep into any one of them because honestly, each one taken on its own, I could do an entire hour and a half class on. So, but we're looking at it through the framework of what do you need to know at this point of your life about money. So I'm trying to create a framework to how to think about that paycheck you're earning and what are some of the good money practices, some of the rules of the road. So whether it's debt repayment, savings, spending, and spending staying out of debt, investing, and of course tzedakah, because we can't talk about money without also talking about charity and giving to others, because it's not just about us. So any questions so far, or comments or thoughts? Okay, I'm going to keep going on, but I hope that there'll be some. So what's interesting about money is so important, but yet they don't teach us about this in school. And I always kind of joke that like there's so much to know about adult finances. Like, shouldn't there be an owner's manual? And yet somehow we're all supposed to know what to do with our money. And our parents and our friends and other family members can be very helpful in unpacking this for us and giving us guidance, but not always, even with the best intention. I hear a lot of clients, and when I'm teaching, talk about what their parents have done and what they've suggested that they do. And I do definitely do not want to disregard the advice of parents because often their advice is very good. But because of the generational difference, I'm also keenly aware that we're living in a different economic environment than maybe when your parents came of age before they got married or right after they got married. And so what worked for them is not necessarily a framework or the rules of the road that are going to be most helpful for you. So I just want to point that out, that with all the best intentions, sometimes our parents don't know because what worked for them is not really the reality that we live in. I think one good example of that is student loan debt. Many of your parents might not have contended with student loan debt. College and university was more affordable. There was more financial aid at the time, and so, or if you did borrow, they might have paid it off faster. And so, some of us are already starting behind, that it's already hard to get together a down payment on an apartment for a newly married couple because they might still be slogging through some you know student loan debt. And so that's a very different thing. On the opposite side, some people might have parents that had pensions for jobs that they did with the city or in education. And now we're seeing far fewer people have pensions. And so saving for retirement earlier is a message that many have not gotten. And I'm going to talk a little bit about why that's important through this talk. So things are always changing. And also sometimes there are even better savings vehicles. So there's the negative that I talked about, but there's also the positive too, that investing has become less expensive and more accessible to smaller investors. So what might have been more daunting for your parents' generation is more accessible through various developments and just good products that come on the market that can help somebody invest their money without a lot of fuss. So it's complicated out there and the rules are always changing. So most of you have never heard of a certified financial planner, and I don't blame you because I think before I started working at CNN Financial News, I really didn't know what it was either. But I think it sets the stage for who I am and what I'm going to try and share with you tonight. And basically, a certified financial planner is just trying to help you put that piece in the puzzle. We teach our clients how to organize their money, prioritize their goals. It's very goal oriented. Who are you and what are you trying to do? And then make a plan that takes advantages of the tools and the tax breaks and to help you stay the course with your plan unless your situation changes, which honestly it always does. You might have a new job, you may get married, you have a baby, you might have a family emergency. Sometimes there's divorce. Sometimes people receive an inheritance and don't know what to do. So these are all the things that we contend with and help people make smart decisions that benefit them as certified financial planners. Okay. But I'm going to teach you how to do it yourself today. That's really what the point of this is. And so I don't know if anybody would be willing to share this, but I assume that there are people there, with student loan debt, because that is a reality that of our times. It's just very hard to find people who don't have student loan debt out there. It's the price that we pay to borrow money and become our professional selves often. So what I want to say about student loan debt is that it doesn't have to ruin your life. It doesn't have to be paying it back, doesn't have to be your only financial priority. Of course, we have to pay attention to it, but doesn't have to be the sole focus of your life. And there are various ways that you can make a payment plan especially if you have federally backed student loans. And right now the federal government has put what they call blanking out on the word, but it's a pause on the repayment right now because of COVID and the economic crisis. So it's in administrative forbearance. So most federally backed loans are in administrative forbearance right now, which means they hit the pause button and interest is not accruing on the loan. So it's a time where if you can pay, it can be advantageous to continue paying if you have a job and you can make those payments. But if you can't, you're not going to be penalized for it. It's not going to be a negative on your credit score, and you're not going to have to stress about it. We'll have to see in the new year what happens, and we should have some sort of signal about that in the next month or so. But at least until the end of December of this year, that anybody who has a federally backed student loan is not required to pay it right now. The other thing I suggest that if your interest rates are very high, and some people have interest rates that are, 6.8%, 7.5. I see that sometimes on graduate school loans from several years ago, that you could go out into the private market and look to refinance some of it. Right now, the federal government does not offer refinancing of federally backed student loans, but it is possible to find it in the private market, and that might help reduce the amount that you have to pay not only every month, but over the period of the loan, and really help you with your cash flow and other expenses that you have to cover. And the main thing I want to say is that there's nothing to be embarrassed about. Periodically, I hear people that feel guilty that they have student loans and maybe it's been 10 years and they still haven't paid it off, or they're just embarrassed that they had to borrow money to go to school to begin with. There's absolutely nothing. This is as normal as can be, and there's absolutely nothing to be embarrassed about with student loan. We just don't want it to ruin our lives. We don't want it to overwhelm every decision we make. And I see that out there sometimes of people who are waiting to have families or maybe not buying a place to live because they feel that they're crushed by the payments they have to make to their student debt providers. Anybody have any thoughts or questions about this? Nothing in the chat box? All right, we'll continue. So there's another type of debt that also grips people sometimes, and that's credit card debt. And it's easy to get into credit card debt, especially if we got a card and we didn't really learn how to use it. All of a sudden, it gave us access to things, and we didn't even have to have money in order to buy these things. So the psychology research shows that people are more likely to overspend using a credit card than they are with cash. And that makes sense if you think about it, because, well, if you spend the cash that you have, then it's gone. So you're not spending anymore. So there's much more of a connection between what I'm spending and what I have. So the actual physical cash will be a reminder of the limitations of money. But when you can whip out plastic, well, the sky's the limit, right? You can have whatever you want when you want, except that the debt is very expensive and it could really set you behind in other goals, especially as you start out in life. So credit card debt happens for different reasons. Sometimes we were raised in families that, spent with abandon, and we thought that was just the way of the world. But other times it may be because there wasn't savings for emergencies, that somebody had, a medical emergency. And so that, the only resource available was a credit card. So medical debt is a real thing in our country. But often it also means that people spent and lived above their means, and they now have to get that under control. The really bad thing about credit card debt is that it's so expensive, and it's almost like a hidden expense that maybe you're not always so aware of. I'm going to try to unpack that for you in a minute to show you why I think credit card debt is so against the average consumer. It's hard to pay off, and it's really a waste of money. And so I'm warning you about credit card debt because it's so easy to fall into. So I use this very simple example of maybe you have a Chase card or an Amex or some other kind of card, and you wanted to go away on vacation when back in the day when we all traveled without being worried about getting on a plane, or you may have bought things ahead of a wedding and thought that you just put it on a credit card. And so actually the average credit card debt of people who have debt is higher than $3,000, but I wanted to take something that, more modest, that somebody unwittingly could get themselves into. So the credit card company will give you a monthly minimum payment. They'll let you know on the statement what is the minimum that you have to pay each month. And that is typically 2% of the balance that you carry, this $3,000 that you couldn't pay off when the bill was due. And then they also have something else called interest. So they made you a loan and now they want you to pay it back with interest. 19% is not even on the highest end of the interest payment. I see people with interest as much as 29.9%, I think was the highest that I had ever seen. I haven't seen anybody yet with 30% interest. But if you have not been careful with your credit and you've missed payments, you can expect your interest rate to be higher, because there is a connection between the interest rate that the credit card company assigns to a borrower, credit card user, and their track record, their history with paying back debt. So I'm curious to know if, and this, I'm not asking any personal questions here, this is a share as you want, but the question that I want to ask all of you smart women is that if I have $3,000 of debt on my Chase credit card or any credit card, and I'm paying $60 a month because I'm complying with the minimum payment, and I'm at 19% interest, anybody have any guess either how long it'll take me to pay this back or how much interest I might pay total without adding any new debt to this? Anybody have
5 years.
Okay, I have a taker for 5 years. Anybody want to say more than that or less than that?
It might be more, but
I say 30.
Okay, you're 30 years. Wow, that's a mortgage already. You could own a home for that. I hope it's not 30. I heard somebody say that it's probably more than that. Okay, I'm going to show you the numbers in a minute. How much do you think, if you're paying 19% interest and you're paying the $60 minimum each month, which the credit card said it's fine, it won't even impact your credit. How much do you think you're going to owe at the end of this?
more than the bill, that's for sure.
That's correct. That is a very important thing to whoever said that. Thank you very much. That was good math thinking. So here's how it breaks down. We've got $3,000 of debt, and it actually.
Could I ask a question?
Yo, please.
Do credit cards really have 19% interest? That sounds really high.
No, that's really low.
Yeah,
Really?
I think it's. That's interesting. You think it's low? I think it's somewhere in between. I think it's sort of. I tried to take something that might be an average.
Usually I've seen the ones that I have say it's 24%. Some of them are 21%, 19 to me. If I was getting a new credit card, then I would take it because that's pretty low compared to the other ones that I had in the future.
That's, I totally get what you're saying. I have also seen higher. Occasionally I see people with like 16%, and 19 does seem high. So whoever said that, great. But actually it's in the middle or the lower end of it. There are many cards coming out that are offering, to give you a card at much higher interest rates. And I was once teaching a debt class at Brooklyn Brainery here in Prospect Heights, where I met Michal when she came to one of my talks on investing with a friend. And I was doing this debt repayment class. And so people were telling in the class were very forthcoming in sharing the interest rates that they were paying. And I ran for the first time. I know this is hard to believe, but I ran home because I actually didn't know the interest rate on my credit card because I had never paid interest on it. I always pay my credit card on time and in full. So it hadn't occurred to me even to look at it. And I couldn't believe it when I got home and I saw my interest rate was 19.99. Now, why anybody bothers with 19.99, I'll never know. But so let's, if you round it, I had a 20% interest rate. And I was kind of really upset because here I was teaching a class to help people, pay off their debt and move on. And what I was hearing was that the whole class had a lower interest rate than I did. And it became a matter of ridiculous pride. I'm just going to admit that to you. So I called my credit card company and I said, and I have to say, I was unintelligible because I was all wound up. I had just been teaching for an hour and a half and I found what I perceived as this injustice. And so I called up and I'm telling them about Brooklyn Brainery and this debt repayment class and blah, blah, blah. I'm unintelligible, I'm sure. And I said, what the person gleaned on the phone was that I was upset about my interest rate. And before I could even finish my spiel, she said, I can lower that by 3%. So that stopped me dead in my tracks. I now have a 16.99% interest rate. And I wasn't even making sense, I imagine. But she heard that I was upset about it. I've had the card for a while. I've never paid a bill late. She gave me a lower interest rate. And then it became something of an obsession to see how low I could go. So a few days later, I called back, completely forgetting or not realizing that they take notes. And I'm pushing the envelope here, and they left a note in the record, I'm sure. And I get somebody
Yeah.
else on the phone, and I explain that I've been a great customer and that I feel that I should have a lower interest rate, and they lower it 2 points again. So now I'm like, I'm off to the races. How low can you go? And so a few days later, I call back again to try to lower the interest rate. And they lowered it like 1 or 2% more. But then I was told in no uncertain terms, Miss Genkin, you need to stop calling and asking us to lower the interest rate. We cannot lower this any further, that it's just impossible. And I stopped and I didn't say anything, not because I was mad or upset, but because I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed that the person talking to me now had known how many times I had called to do this. And so I was silent, and the person at the credit card company interpreted my silence as anger or dissatisfaction. And she filled the uncomfortable silence, because I think I went silent for a while. And she said, but what I can do to thank you for your business is give you 50, what they called 50 dividend dollars. These are like rewards points because I take them in cash for using the card. So then I'm really silent because I'm realizing, wow, she's sending me money just to shut me up. Like, this is fantastic. I have to tell people about this. So I'm silent again, and she's perceiving dissatisfaction. And so she says, well, I can make it 100, but I can't go any higher. So at that point, I finally got something out of my mouth to say, thank you very much. And I really appreciate you working with me. And so they sent me $100 for complaining and then stop complaining. But really, for me, it was just more of a science experiment anyway, because I'm never going to pay a bill late unless there's some unforeseen event, because I don't spend more money than I have. And so it was really just an exercise to see, how does this work? So if you
Which
are in a
credit card company is it?
say that again.
Which credit card company is it? Just curious.
I'm going to tell you, it's I have a Citi card, a Citibank dividend card. I think they call it a World Dividend card.
Mhm.
So, but I think that
That's
all of them,
incredible customer service.
that's good customer service. I think that, I had been a customer for more than 10 or 15 years. And I think, I've never said peep to anybody. So I just found the right people, and they were willing to help. And this is something for all of you to note, that if you are carrying some debt, that it's possible to call and try and have them lower the interest rate, which will help you pay off the debt. So
Thank you.
I did it as an exercise, and then it became a fascination and an obsession. But, if you call and the first person says no, don't take it personally, because, well, if you call back, somebody else might say yes, and that's all you need. So interest rates can be lowered. And so going back to our example, it will take you 8 years to pay off this debt of $3,000 if you're only required to make the minimum payment. Very often we think the minimum payment is like, oh, good, that's really in our favor, but it's not when you consider the total amount that you're going to pay. And so the total interest payment is going to be much more than the debt. And the truth of it is that it would be, and I ran this through a calculator, it would be $2,991 of interest payments. And so the total amount that you'd be paying is basically double the $3,000 if you only paid the minimum interest and you didn't add any additional debt to the card, which very often people do add. They continue charging because they don't have enough cash in the first place, or maybe it's just a habit. And so they don't realize that this is all stacking up against them.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
If you pay off your card every month,
Yep.
then like would you say there are advantages to a credit card over just using like a debit card?
I love this question so much because I think that a generation of people believe that using credit is a bad thing. And I want to encourage you to have a credit card because one day, if you want to buy a house or an apartment, you're going to need a credit score. And to have a credit score, you need credit history. You don't want to wake up one day and be 35 years old with no credit history, right? Because no one's going to lend you money at the bank to buy a house if you don't have a credit history. Think of a credit report and a credit score kind of like a report card and a grade from school, right? And so if you want to go up to higher education, you have to have some sort of transcript or track record with it so people know that you do the hard work. It's the same thing here with credit. And so I do favor, and I'm going to qualify this by saying you don't need a lot of credit cards. I see that mistake being made too. But I think that having a credit card, one credit card, and putting a limited amount of charges on it. Maybe you have something recurring that you might have an exercise class that you would put on the credit card, and you want to pay it off in full by the due date, if not before, every month. And that's the best way to build a credit history so that people know you're good for the money and that if you wanted to borrow money to buy a car or a house or anything else, you would have access to the best interest rates, what we call a prime interest rate. So there's nothing wrong with using a debit card if you just want to keep it simple. But I really do think that having one credit card for emergencies as a backup, and even just having one very moderate charge on it a month, is just a very good way to build a credit history. Sometimes people abuse it and there's all these points and rewards and miles and things like that. And so people get in the habit of charging more and taking out more cards. That's the slippery slope to getting into trouble with credit cards. But credit cards don't have to be something bad. It's a backup if you were ever in a situation where you needed money to, cash quickly, that you could put something on the credit card.
So you could use your debit as the base, as your go-to. If you're someone who you know that if you have a credit card and you're just going to use it too often, and then that's how you get the debt on your credit card.
Right. I think that
Type that.
for somebody like that, I think it's smart to use a debit card or cash just so that you keep yourself, in line. And when I say get a credit card, you could put, if you have a Spotify account or something, you could put the charge on that, but you don't have to carry the credit card if you feel that you'd get in trouble with it. And so you can just keep it in a drawer or something like that.
That's still building credit.
And you're still building credit, because the thing is that you want to use the card at least just a little bit. Like, for instance, I had my gym membership. I'm not at the gym at the moment, obviously, but I have my gym membership and my Netflix account is on the credit card. So even if I haven't used the credit card at all that month, I'm going to have those two charges. They're fixed, so I know exactly what I'm going to have to pay. And actually, on one of my cards, I automate the payment on a particular date in the month, so I don't even have to think about it or worry about it, that it's going to go automatically from my bank to pay the credit card. And so that's the best way to sort of establish a good credit score and to keep it high, is to use a less of your available credit than is being offered to you, and to not forget to make the payments and to make it in time and in full.
Mhm.
And you don't have to carry the credit card if you want to. Maybe you carry the credit card when you travel, either away from the city, away from the state, out of the country. You go to Israel, you have a credit card with you. Doesn't mean you have to use it. It's just there
Right.
just in case.
Right.
Does that make sense? It gets harder to establish credit later on. What I've noticed in working with people from all different backgrounds is, especially working in Brooklyn and New York City, I have a fair number of clients who come from other countries. And so they come and they have a work life and they have families, but it's very hard for them initially to establish credit. And so they might not be eligible for a credit card because they have no credit history. So if that were to happen to you, that you apply for a card or you fill out an application for a card offer and that you can't get it, one thing you can do is if you get like a Macy's credit card, it's easier to get a store credit card. And then if you establish that you handle it, responsibly, then you have your foot in the door to establishing a credit track record, and then you would be eligible in time to get a card, that might be, just a national card, not attached to a store.
Isn't there a
Tiffany?
card that you can get straight from your bank to
There,
build
there
up your
is,
credit?
there is. Those are, I forgot what they call those, but sometimes what they're doing is that they require you to put, it's a secure card. So they require you to put money on the card. For instance, you get the card and it's like filling it up. So let's say you or somebody in your family puts $300 into an account. Then what they're doing is they're drawing down. When you use the card, they're drawing down from it. And
Stephanie?
so, yes.
So I have a question. I'm not sure. Did you finish the last?
Oh, yeah. Please go ahead.
Okay, so there's a question that was sent to me. It says, how does credit card offer more purchase protection in addition to rewards and insurance? That's question number one. And I think it connects with the next question is, how does credit card interest accrue? When purchases are added to the open balance, I notice my charge interest on more than the balance left from last bill. How does it all work? So basically there's a bit of confusion. You can help us out.
About how it works. Well, the credit card does give you some added protection. If you wanted to dispute a charge, you could go to your credit card company and say, I called Amazon and told them that the thing that I charged was broken, so I'm disputing the charge. So you do have more consumer protection through the credit card to be able to dispute a charge, as as opposed to if you had just used your debit card, there's no recourse there in that situation. So that can be very useful. In terms of how the interest is charged, by whenever well, first of all, the interest compounds. So if you're not paying the interest in full each month, it's possible that it's not supposed to happen this way, but the minimum payment could be lower than the interest rate that's accruing. But even if that's not the case, when you add another item to it, let's say you bought something that's $50 and you had already owed, another $1,000 to it. If you're not paying off the new charge by the time of the next due date, that's just being added into the debt. And then there's interest on that as well. So it becomes very hard to get control of this once it starts, especially when you're paying interest on interest. So that good deal that you thought you might have gotten at Banana Republic, I know that I don't go in there often, but the last time I went in there was about a year and a half ago on the Upper West Side, and I found something, cute that I wanted to buy and it fit. So I'm standing online and I probably sound like a crazy person because they said, oh, you could have 10% off of everything that you buy today if you open up a Banana Republic credit card. And I don't want the discount. The discount is an incentive to get in debt. They make their money off of interest. So of course, it's not a deal if I get 10% off, but I'm paying 19% interest. So you have to be very careful of what's being offered, because some of these store cards, they're like drug dealers. They get you hooked, and then you keep shopping and you keep owing more money. And that's how they make their money. Did I answer the question?
Yes, thank you so much.
No problem. I mean, the best thing that you could do if you find yourself at some point with credit card debt is try to make more than the monthly minimum payment that they're requiring you to. So the more you could pay off bigger chunks of it each month, the less you're going to owe and the less debt, the less interest that's accruing so that you could finish off the debt payments. Sometimes what I see clients do when they feel that they just can't get ahead of the interest on this is what's killing them, is that they'll get an offer for a 0% credit card and they'll roll the balance over to that new card so that they have a fighting chance to pay it off without 19, 22, 25% interest, because the
How do you
interest.
do that?
Oh, there's you can look online. I could also email the group or send it to Michal before Sunday and show you. There's some good websites that show you, you know, credit cards that are offering 0% for a limited time. So it's a business model. You need to understand that. So very often a credit card will say 0% interest for 18 months. So that gives you breathing room. But you have to use this like responsibly and know that you could pay it off in the 18 months. So first of all, they're going to charge you on the front end. They'll charge you a percentage of the balance that you're rolling over to the 0%. So they're getting money up front. So it might be like, you'll pay $300 for the privilege of rolling this over to 0%. Then if you're doing it the right way, you're making these bigger payments and you've calculated that you can get rid of the debt in that 18 months. And also just caveat, be careful, don't add more debt to it just because it's 0%. You're not supposed to be charging on it. You want to make sure that this will help you pay it off. If you don't pay it off, in my example, in the 18 months, then the interest rate bounces up sometimes even higher than the interest that you had before. So you have to be careful about that. Don't use it as a way to keep charging things that you can't pay off. You want to make sure that whether you're getting a 12-month, an 18-month, or a 21-month 0%, that you're actually going to be able to pay it off. So I can have for next week offers where you can look for this if you're in that situation.
Oh, thank you. Can I ask you another question?
Please, this is all for you guys.
So would you be calling the bank with your current debt, or would you be calling the bank that you're transferring it to?
Oh, what you'd be, so in your example, is that you mean the credit card?
The debt, like if you have credit card debt that's
Right.
being charged interest.
So you'd be calling the credit card company. So for instance, you might have a Citi card, like mine was a Citi card, but that's not actually my bank. I'm actually a Chase, but you don't necessarily have to use the credit card of your bank. Sometimes it works out that you've done that. You had money in the account, they offered you a credit card and you took it. So you're at the same place. But you'd be calling, there's always a number on the back of the credit card to be able to call them, like a 1-800 number from anywhere in the US and Canada. And so that's what if you were calling to see what you could do, you would just call that 1-800 number, and that's connected to the credit card company. That is backed by a bank, but you're specifically calling the credit card division. So check your credit card. Another place to find the 1-800 number for customer service is also on your bill, whether you get a physical bill in the mail or it's online. You'll find it there as well. And you just need to know your credit card number, because usually you punch in the last 4 digits of the account, and then either you'll work your way through an automated system or you'll ask for a representative and be able to talk to somebody. And sometimes if I get somebody out of the country who really isn't empowered to help me because they're following a script, that also happens, then I politely ask for a supervisor, because I'm looking for somebody who has more latitude to be able to do what I'm asking them to do. Does that answer your question?
Mhm.
Great.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. No problem. So, so again, this is a thing that can happen that people, you just don't know. And because we don't learn about credit and debt in school, and sometimes we don't learn it at home, that sometimes people can get into, New York is expensive. It's expensive to live in Brooklyn. And so this can happen. And remember when I said at the beginning that, cash is a bad long-term investment because it loses purchasing power to inflation. I'm still advocating savings, and this follows nicely from talking about debt like credit card debt. We need to be able to have some savings in the bank. This is very important. There's a study by bankrate.com, which is a website, and every year they show that the majority of Americans from every walk of life that I think it's like 70% don't even have $500 in the bank to cover an emergency. So we need to have savings for those unforeseen expenses, and sometimes expenses that we do expect. And so the rule of thumb is like you want to at least have $500 in the bank to cover things that you didn't expect. And that might sound like it's hard to build that up at this moment. Start small. That's fine. Can you do $25 or $75 of each paycheck, put it in the bank with the idea of this is a savings account, not a checking account, so I'm not going to touch it. Sometimes people open up an online savings account so that it's harder to get to it, so that it really does become a piggy bank with a lockbox.
How do you find a high interest savings account?
It's a great question, and I'm laughing with you because in this low interest rate environment, high interest, high yield does not have the definition that it once did. So the problem is that the Federal Reserve, the equivalent of central bank of the U.S., has decreased interest rates, and so interest rates are so low that it's hard for any savers to find interest. Right now, the highest interest rates that I've seen that don't have a minimum in the bank account is 0.60. So less than 1% is now considered high yield. And this is kind of depressing. When I was helping people start high yield accounts just even a year and a half ago, you could get 2.25%, 2.5% interest. And my father used to always laugh because, he remembers much higher interest rates, much higher inflation rates, and would say, like, 2.5%. How is that high yield? Well, you know what? That sounds really high yield in comparison to where it is now. It's much less than 1%. And if you're in a bricks and mortar bank, you're getting like, 0.05. Nothing, it's not even getting any interest. So the higher interest rates right now, which I don't think anybody would consider high, could be accounts like Marcus, Marcus. That is supposedly a high yield savings account that has no minimum payment, no no minimum balance, no monthly service fee. So you can look there. You can also look towards a bank called Synchrony. Synchrony is an online savings, but I think they also now issue a debit card, so you could have some limited access to your money through other ATMs. I've heard of people getting decent deals in this current low rate environment from Ally, as well as Amex has like a banking branch. So I'm making a note so that I can send you to a page to look for, I'm saying it in air quotes, high interest rate bank accounts. And they're all online because when you don't have bricks and mortar, it's cheaper to run it, so you could offer a little bit more interest. And also the 0% credit cards for people who might need to, get a little help to pay down that debt. So I'll have that handy for you before next time.
So does the interest get higher if your credit score is below 700, let's say?
On the savings account, such an interesting question. I love hearing what people ask because it makes me better at what I do to understand what are people's concerns. On a bank account, your credit score will never be a factor because once you're putting money in, all money is equal. So everybody's getting the same interest rate unless they might want more of your money. So they say for deposits above $50,000, they'll give you more interest. But yeah, they're doing it because they are making money with your money. So of course they want more money at the bank. But when it comes to savings, your credit score and the interest you get will not be a factor at all. It is when you're a borrower and you're using a credit card. Then they want to know they're going to be paid back. So the interest rate is linked to what kind of risk they think you are. If you've had trouble in the past or missed payments, even missing one payment, they could say, uh-oh, this one's a risk, so the interest rate is higher. But if you have a good track record of always paying it off on time, then they're like, oh, this person is reliable. We don't have to charge as much interest. But with a bank account, that will not be a factor at all. You can get your credit score through some bank accounts. They offer it as a service, but it's not going to be a factor of the interest that you can get. The interest that we get is really a factor of the economic environment. And right now we're in a very low interest rate environment, and that's basically a policy to try to stimulate the economy. So people will borrow more and spend more, and that will help create more jobs and money flowing through the economy. So interest rates are going to be low for the foreseeable future, but unfortunately, not so much for credit cards, really just for borrowing and like for a mortgage or the interest that you would be paid on a bank account.
Right.
You always
How
want to
long-
be adding a little. Oh, go ahead.
No, sorry. How long does it take to repair credit if you missed a payment? Like, how long does it take to repair?
It really depends what it was. I mean, if you missed a payment and you're trying to repair your credit by, paying down the debt and paying on time, you can see your credit scores start going up in a couple of months. If you had a bigger challenge with credit, it could take a year or more. So it depends on, if it was a matter of racking up credit card debt and being a little bit late with the payments, you will see that the more new history there is that's positive, the further down it gets pushed on your credit report and the less impact it has on your credit score. Everybody can recover. I mean, even people who declare bankruptcy can come back. A bankruptcy even goes away from your credit report in 7 years. So any addition of new positive information will help turn around your credit score. And it might only be 5 points at a time, but you'll get back in time up over 700. But sometimes it doesn't happen that quickly. One trick that I found that works very well, and people often don't know about this, so it is a tool that you can use, is let's say that you don't have a good credit score, you have a credit card, you've accidentally misused it, and you get now that you can't do that and you're trying to repair your credit. And this is going to sound really risky, but it's not. I'm going to tell you why. And let's say you have a mom or dad or a brother, sister who has great credit, always pays it on time, doesn't use a lot of credit, but pays it back on time, and very high credit score. You could become, I mean, you obviously have to ask this person, but you could become an authorized user on their credit card. Now that sounds like the road to chaos, right? Why would my brother with a great credit score want to make me an authorized user on his credit card? Like, won't I mess up his credit? the way that you use it to bump up your credit score is, and the way that you can negotiate this with a family member who might be concerned, is that you're asking to become an authorized user, but don't take the credit card. You're not going to use it. You don't need it. It might come to your family member in the mail. Tell them to hold on to it. Just by the fact that you're associated with the account and they're paying off their credit card on time and in full each month, you will get the benefit of their good payments. And that is a quicker way, as long as you're also doing your own hard work with your credit, in paying your bills and getting out from under credit card debt. This will be a faster way for you to improve your credit.
Mm-hmm.
I've even, so full disclosure, I have many friends who are also independent financial advisors. And one of my good friends, his son, started to work for a friend of ours who's an expert in credit repair. He works with lots of people in sports and music. And so my friend's son had asked him if he could have, what was this guy's name? It was some rapper, Lil somebody, if he could become an authorized user on my friend's credit card. And my friend is like, I don't want some rapper on my card. And his son said, he doesn't know about you. We're not giving him a card. It's just, Dad, that I know that you pay off your credit card every month and you have a great score. So we just want him to be an authorized user on your credit card for 12 months, so he doesn't have any credit and he wants to buy a Mercedes or something like that. And so we'll just take him off the card. And they actually offered my friend a bonus. And so he got a credit card with this rapper's name on it, and who became his authorized user. And then he was taken off the card. I think it was less than 12 months later, when this guy had established now his own credit. So it's not just with family members, it's possible to do this with other people. So we were all a bunch of independent financial planners sitting and listening to this story. And I was the first one to raise my hand and say, well, I'll have a wrapper on my credit card if he doesn't know about me, and I can, make a couple of $100. So it could be a business. So your family member might be uncomfortable or nervous about it, but the fact of the matter is, I always instruct clients when we're doing this, like, make it clear that you don't want access to their credit, you don't want the credit card. It would just help you to be associated with the account.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just a neat little tip if you're trying to expedite this. So don't forget about saving, because saving is what's going to keep you out of credit card debt. Why am I never worried that I'm going to have to pay interest on my credit card? Because I keep plenty of money in a savings account. So if, whoopsie, I spent too much this month and I don't have the money in my checking account, I'm going to go to the savings account and then I'll pay myself back later. Because again, if you just look at it mathematically, on a high yield account, a high interest rate account, savings account, I'm earning 0.60, but I would be charged, you now all know, it's lower than the 19.99, but back in the day, that's what I would have been charged. So that doesn't make mathematical sense. So if I have my own savings, then I could borrow money from myself to avoid higher interest rate debt. So cash is queen. Cash is going to save you in many instances, especially if maybe, your work gets cut to part-time, either by choice or not choice. It's always good to have that cash cushion of savings in the bank for short-term needs. And many people say, well, how much cash should I have? And I would say that you want to target, doesn't mean it's going to happen overnight, 3 to 6 months of living expenses. I think if you have children, you want to be on the higher side, because things can happen with children where you need to cover expenses unforeseen. So I would be on the higher side in that case. But, for somebody who's single in their 20s, it might be enough just to have a couple of months of money back up. And I always say that because I am self-employed, that I think that you should have more of a cash cushion if possible, so that if things go wrong, you're not taken down by it. Because self-employed, we don't know. We're in a unique economy right now. Things fell apart not because of anything that anybody did, but because we're in a pandemic and it's causing a lot of economic stress. And so having that cash reserve can help you get back on your feet again. So don't forget about saving. I see that I probably won't have enough time for all the slides, but I really, really, really like the questions because this is all for you. So don't stop with them if you have stuff that you want to ask, because I'm not beholden to the slides, and we can always review whatever remains on Sunday again. This is really for you to know how to think about where you are and where you're going with your money. And now, when I get to the part you need a budget, this is where some people flip out because they hear, and I'm not saying it, but they hear you need a diet. We're going to reduce your spending. We're going to reduce your calories. We're going to kill the fun. That's not what a budget is. Replace budget with you need a spending plan so that you can spend money joyfully and know what's the right amount to spend. So this is a very simple budgeting tool that requires no technology, just pencil and paper. You figure out what your monthly paycheck is, the part that you receive after taxes or health insurance or any other stuff that's taken out pre-tax, and the part that lands in your bank account. How much money are you getting each month for your job? If you get paid once a month, that's the number. If you get 2 paychecks a month, then you're adding them together. And just on a very high level, this is so useful. 50% of that after-tax take-home pay should be spent on essential purchases. Things like rent, your cell phone, electricity, transportation, any kind of, basic groceries, the copay from a doctor's appointment, pharmaceuticals, if they're not covered by your health insurance. These are the essential things, okay? So 50%, it would make sense for 50% of your paycheck to go to these essential things. The largest chunk is obviously going to be rent or a mortgage if you own. And then what do you do with the other 50%? Well, you want to set yourself up for your goals. So it might be savings, or you might have to start with debt repayment first, a student loan or a credit card if you're trying to, get past all of that. So whatever you're paying, required to pay per month, or if you can pay a little bit more, that's going to reduce. So it's savings and debt repayment. So first you focus on the debt repayment. Let's say your 20% of money of your paycheck would be, let's say, hypothetically, I'm making up numbers, $800. Then what you're saying is if you have, $200 a month that you're paying off in credit card debt, then you have to subtract that, and then you could pay $600 towards other goals, whether it's putting money in your savings account, putting money in a retirement account at work, a 403B if you're a teacher or you work at a hospital, an IRA if you're saving individually for retirement. And I could get into that a little bit after. But what I think is that I want you to know is that if you're living with, your number, what's 50% of your paycheck, and you use that as a guide to say, this is what I have to spend on essentials. So, we're basically paying the same thing every month, whether it's rent or a mortgage, whether, we're creatures of habit with groceries, transportation, your electricity bill. That number's not going to vary too much from month to month. Once you see that you're living within your means, then you want to set yourself up for the 20%, whether it's debt repayment, building up your savings account, putting money away, tax deferred or not for retirement. Automate those things so that you automatically are putting your goals first. And then the 30% on whatever you want, then you're clear about, can you afford to spend that money? Because you've already ascertained that you can live within your means. You've already set yourself up to pay yourself first by funding your goals. And then, if you buy shoes that you think are too expensive, but you could afford them because it fits into that 30%, then do it and don't feel bad about it. This almost gives you permission, not like a regular budget where it takes away, you're supposed to be reducing. This is to say that a balanced money life is 50% for needs, 20% for debt repayment and savings, and then go spend the 30% on whatever you want.
What if your essential payments are automatically higher than 50% of what you're making?
That's difficult.
Which I think is, sorry,
Yeah,
I think
no,
it's probably most people with kids is probably true. I'm saying just on childcare alone, it's like
childcare is the thing. So oddly enough, when I'm working with clients who are single, and this is an expensive town, what I find when I'm working on, budgeting and setting people up for success is that they're actually living within 50% of their needs. So wow, then they're just spending the other 50% or more on whatever they want. And that's why we have a goal in saving, a hole in the savings, and we're not paying back debt. But the childcare thing, you are correct, is the thing that can derail this. And so these are just guidelines. If you feel that you're really in that childcare situation where it's derailing these percentages, then I think what you have to do and decide with a spouse is, maybe what you're doing is it's not 30% for whatever you want. Maybe it's 20% for whatever you want. And that there's a little less discretionary spending. There's a little less fun during that time that you need the childcare.
I also want to bring up an amazing thing that you said about automation.
Yes.
And I think for me, it made the biggest difference.
Yay.
Yeah, I think I want to mention, I'm not sure if but there's one of the books, The Latte Factor, helps you see how to automate it.
Mm-hmm.
Another one is it's by David Bach, and he has another one where he walks you step by step how to automate all those things. So
fantastic.
I'm building my credit without even blinking because it's already going to where it's meant to go, or I'm paying certain things without even blinking. It's my savings, there's already going to savings automatically before I even see it. So
that's powerful. Well, that's called pay yourself first. So you don't miss what you don't already have in the account, right? You get paid and you set it up. So boom, this amount goes to the savings account. This amount goes to debt repayment, to the credit card. X amount goes to, an investment account or something. And then you just learn to live on the rest.
What's the like in the Latte Factor, they like mention this like high yielding savings account. Like
that was written in a different era.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like it all sounds all great. But
well, what
you're saying it doesn't exist.
At the moment, it doesn't exist. And that can be an opportunity for some people, not so much savers, but people who need to borrow money. So it's cheaper to borrow money to buy a car, for instance, or to buy an apartment. But on the saver end, it's not so great. But I still want to emphasize that even though we're in a low interest rate environment and high yield now is lower than 1%, that it's still worth putting money away in savings to prevent you from having to pay higher interest if for some reason you couldn't pay off your credit card, so you have money to back up for yourself, which is really important in an uncertain economy. So yeah, thank you for bringing up David Bach and the latte factor, and this notion of automation just takes the human error or human temptation out of all of this. So if things are going to the right places from the moment that your paycheck hits the bank account, then you're not going to have a problem. Then you're already funding your goals before you even do anything else. But I
There was a-
totally sympathize on the childcare part, because all over my clients, all over New York, I see that this is the most difficult thing in making the budget work. And so the money has to come from somewhere. So are you saving a little bit less during that period where you need childcare? Are you lowering the amounts? All of these percentages are flexible for the individual who needs to create the budget. For instance, years ago, when I first came upon this and I was understanding my own money with this, I was really in a super saver investing phase. And so I flipped the numbers. I saved more than, actually, my target was 30%. I was actually saving more than 30%. And I used the 20% number as my fun spending. So you can mix and then once I hit my goals, I flipped it back again. Or maybe you're not spending as much money on rent, so you can afford to slip in other things like childcare. Everybody has a different situation. And so just look at these percentages as guides for the period that you're in and how you need to make this work. But the point that I want to make is, don't forget about the savings. Save something. That's a good practice wherever, whatever stage of life that you're in. Try to save something. So I am missing something from the graphic here, which I didn't design, but I think that it's a good just depiction of what we're all saying is you receive your salary, it hits your bank account, you want to put it in, savings, debt repayment, or an investment vehicle, and don't forget tzedakah, and then you can spend the left, whatever remains. That's how you should think about the money. It's not going to be perfect, but it's going to help you incrementally get where you're going. It's a framework to help you understand what you should do with your salary.
Sorry, could you speak for a minute about investing? Like what exactly?
Sure. So, was that the next thing? Yeah. So here's a good depiction of well, actually, can I explain? I think we're running low on time and I can't keep you here all night, but I want to answer your question in this nice graphic. And I really am almost finished with the PowerPoint, but whatever we need to do for Sunday, we can certainly regroup and I can explain more about what you want to know. This is a great graphic that came from JP Morgan Chase, and it explains the power of investing and compound interest. So let's say, I'll add like a little story to make this more interesting. We have 3 investors here, and let's say each one is going to put money in a broad-based investment, like just a mutual fund that tracks the market. And what we know from a particular index fund that you can invest in that tracks the Standards & Poor 500 largest publicly traded companies, that it makes over 20, 30-year period, it has an average annual return of 10%. There's some risk with it, right? It's not like cash in the bank, but it's money that you're not looking to use short term, you're looking to use it long term. That's what investing is. It's basically using money that you do put at risk to have a larger long-term gain, but cash is for short term. So we have 3 investors, and this really shows the power of investing and compounding. Each one, they're invested all in the same thing, and in this chart, they're getting a 7% annual return, which is not inflated. In fact, it's lower than what investors will get over time in a simple fund that tracks the largest companies in the public companies in the market. So Susan starts putting in $5,000 right out of college. So at 25, she gets her first job. She puts $5,000 in an investment each year because her dad told her this would be a good thing to do to save for retirement, and she does it. And she stops doing it at 35 because she gets married, she has kids, she stops working, and so she just doesn't fund this anymore because she's busy with life. But for those 10 years, she put in $50,000 in this investment. And Bill, her friend, comes back from, a few years at the Peace Corps after college. They meet for lunch, and he says, I got this great job and I'm supposed to invest, but I don't know what I'm doing. And so Susan says, this is what my dad had me do, and it's been going pretty well. So you might want to do it too. So Bill invests $5,000, but he's starting at age 35 when he comes back and gets his first job. But he keeps doing it every year through 65 when he's planning to retire. And he puts in a total of 150,000. It's 5,000 over the time period. So he's put in 3 times more than Susan, but Susan started earlier. And then Chris is basically their friend that is Susan plus Bill. He starts investing and gets the same rate of return, putting $5,000 in at age 25 when Susan does. But he's also working and still contributing to an investment account until he's 65. So he invests a total of $200,000. So he's basically Susan plus Bill on the time and the amount of money. So it wouldn't be a surprise to anybody here looking at this chart that Chris has the most amount of money at age 65. The purpose of this chart for me, why I find it fascinating and instructive all day long, are the following 2 points. One, it might seem a stretch for you at this time, but imagine a person who starts at 25 years old investing in just a simple index fund that tracks the market can earn over $1 million by the time they retire. $5,000 is a stretch for many people. I don't want to belittle this, but it's not a crazy amount of money. So that's the first takeaway. And I teach this in my NYU class, that if you work and you save your money and you invest it, you can actually make $1 million through your lifetime. So that's very empowering. But the
But
takeaway of,
invest it where? There
I'm
are
gonna
so
I'm
many.
gonna tell you in a second. I just want to I'll give you ideas. It's a much longer conversation, but I do want to address that. But the second takeaway, and this is for an age group because many of you are in your 20s, and I want to highlight this. We expect Chris to be the winner, but who comes in second place? Can you tell from the chart?
Susan.
Susan, very good. Why is that surprising? It's surprising because she put in a third less than Bill, and she stopped investing earlier. How can we mathematically explain this? She started earlier, and although she did not contribute after age 35, money compounds. And so time, and that's what I was showing in my little crude drawing here, money, you see in the beginning, it's not going up that much time, but it hits a critical mass and it's a straight line up. Money grows with time. The earlier you start with investing, the more robust it will grow and you will have more later in life. To answer your question about how do you start investing, it's going to be different for each person. The longer, let's say you're investing for retirement, you're not going to touch this money until you're 60 years old and you put it in a retirement account and you're 25 or 30 years old, maybe even older, but you're not going to touch this money for 30 years. You can get, it depends where you open up your account. I recommend something very low cost like Vanguard, and you can just get a fund. I could give you the ticker symbol right now, but you should know how investments work before you invest any money. But you can look it up if you Google the ticker symbol VOO. This is a Vanguard fund that tracks the S&P 500. Again, this is a benchmark of how the stock market is reported. You might remember hearing on the news that the S&P 500 went up 2 points today, or it went up, X amount of dollars or whatever. This fund that I'm discussing right now will track those stocks. So it's a fund is a collection of these stocks. That is how the market is reported. So this is a great place to start. You don't have, my point is, don't pick a stock. That's like gambling. Don't say, I'm going to put $1,000 into Apple. That really is tantamount to gambling. Apple will be in your index fund. If you look up the ticker symbol VOO, this Vanguard fund tracks the 500 largest publicly traded companies in the US. So you'd be invested in all of them also. And I think Apple is the second largest stock on that index. So you don't have to worry about, will Apple go up? Will it not go up? It's part of your diversified investments. So instead of taking a lot of risk by putting money into one thing and keeping your fingers crossed and hoping that Tesla's going up, you don't have to worry because it's already in the fund and with many other funds. And the principle of diversification is as important as the time value of money that I just illustrated. Did any of that
That's
make
really
any
helpful.
sense?
Thank you.
Wow, that was
Yes.
amazing.
So we can, if there's interest in this, I can come and offer some other ideas in this regard, because I do have two things that even if you didn't understand anything I just said, but you're like, I want to invest some money, I can show you two different platforms where you don't have to be an expert. These are ways for you to be able to invest money that would that would grow over time. I can't say that it's never going to go down because investments have risk short term. But if you hold it long term, you will be very happy with the results of these investment platforms that I can share with you on Sunday.
Are one of those E-Trade?
No, I'm not. I mean, E-Trade is fine. I'm not an E-Trade fan. If you want a sneak preview, I'm happy to share that with you. I'm a big fan of a robo platform called Betterment, Betterment. And this is you answer some questions that really get to the heart of your goals, the amount of time you can invest for, and your risk tolerance, and it will put your money into an investment of an assortment of index funds that have a risk factor that are appropriate to the answers that you gave to the questions that it asked. So it replaces a human advisor. And I think it's a very good platform for people to get started. And then the other one that I'm going to just do a little explaining about on Sunday, if there's interest, is Vanguard puts together all-in-one funds. And so they have different mixes of stocks to bonds, depending on what the goal, the risk tolerance, and the amount of time that the investor will be invested for. So they've already packaged them together, so you don't have to pick which index funds or other funds to be in. And it bypasses the temptation to put money in individual stocks. So I want to make this as easy as possible so that you don't have to be preoccupied by it, but that you're in things that you don't have to track, follow, or even deeply understand to make money. And I'll throw another one in there because I'm all about behavior. And there's an app that you can get called Acorns. Does anyone have it?
Yes,
Anyone?
we love Acorn.
Okay. And there's always somebody in all of my talks that have
Yes, I
Acorns.
do too.
And I have yet to meet somebody who knows Acorns and has used it and doesn't love it. So this is another way. What it is basically is that when you spend money, it rounds up and takes the change and puts it in an investment account for you. And you get to pick whether it's conservative, moderate, or aggressive. And so you can pick what your, risk factor is. And so it's basically being able to invest in a very diversified portfolio that matches your goals, and you'll just make money over time without thinking, oh, I'm investing, because they just round up and throw the money in there for you.
I think the beauty of it as well, which we started with just the roundups, but we also decided to add more.
That's great. And that's great. Right. Then you're building that savings and investing habit and automating it. And this is the road to success for people.
Yeah. It seems like many people want to hear more about investments, so maybe we could
I would love that.
Yeah.
I would really love that. And what I'm hoping that we'll also be able to do on Sunday is just talk about what money means for us and how we think about it and what we want our money for. And what I didn't get to, which I will talk a little bit about retirement savings and why you need to start young and some very useful vehicles, but I also want to be able to talk about tzedakah, because it's not only money is not, it's really not ours, right? We're earning it, and we have to do something else with it besides just using it for our own needs, right? We have to share it. That's what it's meant for. And that's a blessing. So there's many different sides of money. If we have if we have a few minutes, I wanted to just see if there's any questions or comments or thoughts about what we've covered so far. I'm hoping it was useful and that, it was a good use of your, when a rainy Wednesday night for you. But I also just want to check in and see if there's something that maybe you didn't understand or something that you want an explanation for or an example.
Yeah, I have a question.
Please.
First of all, thank you so much. Everything was really great and helpful. I want to clarify about the credit score and all that and the interest.
Sure.
So if you don't pay your credit card in full 1 month, and then the next month you do pay it in full. So I'm just confused about, did anything happen?
Yeah. So there's a few ways to think about that. So let's say there was an extra $500 that you couldn't pay off that month, and so the balance carries over to the next month. And you add more to the credit card, and then you pay the whole thing off, what the balance that you carried from the previous month, and then the additional charges that you put on it this month. And then you just paid it all off. Then you probably paid very little in interest because you just carried part of it for 1 month. But now you don't owe any money, so you don't pay any interest. Does that help explain kind of how you were thinking about it?
Yeah. So I guess, so if it happens for 2 months, you're telling me I might pay an extra $5 or what? Am I going to see those charges on my credit card?
You should see the amount broken out and how much you're going to pay in interest. So you'll see the total amount, and they break it up for, this is how much you owe for purchases. And then there's another line at the top of the bill that breaks out how much has accrued in interest. And then if you had to pay a penalty for paying late, like $30 or something, they break down that charge as well. So it won't be in the itemization of what you spent. You know how you open up your bill and you're like, I spent $50 at Macy's, and I spent $20 at Chewy's for my cat, and I spent $15 at the Garden of Eden getting ice cream or whatever. It's not broken out in that part of the credit card statement. It's broken out above that, what you owe, and it's broken down into purchases, interest, and any sort of late fee.
Okay. No, because I guess I was confused, when you're saying you're going to carry this on for years, you're telling
if you're not, so your example, you carried a balance for the second month, but then you paid it all off. in my reality, what I often see is that people are not paying it off in full the next month, that they're saying, oh good, I only owe $60, that's the required minimum payment, so I'll just pay that.
And they don't realize that their
It-
statement is just accruing.
Right. They think that, oh, this is a nice, lender. I only have to pay $60. Just because they're letting you only pay $60 as a minimum doesn't mean that you should be. They've set that minimum so they get some money, but even more in the interest. So you have to be very careful and think about why they're allowing this. They're allowing it for their benefit. They hope that you stay in debt and pay that 19% interest. That's not for your benefit.
What do you say now with COVID? There are like any special considerations for people not paying their full credit card or anything like that?
The credit cards are the last people to have considerations. That's the honest truth, that they're nervous that people are going to default on their payments. So because they, were downsized in their jobs or furloughed or let go. So I think that if you owe money now, it's harder to get consideration from the credit card companies.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm sorry to bring that harsh news to you, but again, they're in a money-making business and they're nervous that there are now more people than ever who are struggling to pay their credit card bills. So it's hard to get that consideration, but I guess, and I will send this out to everybody, but again, you may qualify for a 0% limited time card, and then you can give yourself the consideration to be able to freeze any credit for the period that the card allows, and then you're making bigger payments to principal, and you'll move through the debt quicker than if there was this, 19 or 25% interest rate tacked onto it.
Would you say it's even worth it to like roll that over? Let's say if like you just are like $200 below the full payment.
I don't think I would. And there's a lot of considerations there. I think if I owed something like $200, I'd probably slog it out and maybe reduce expenses for a couple of months and just be able to pay that off. And part of the reason is that opening up a 0% card can be very helpful, but it could temporarily impact your credit score. So if that's important to you, then I wouldn't want to. Also, I don't even know if these cards allow you to roll over something as small as $200. Because remember, it's a money-making business. How much are they going to make on $200? So if you have $200 that you're seeking to pay off, I think you could probably, do that on your own and not sweat it.
Thanks.
Yeah, no problem.
Wow. Thank you so much, Stephanie. This has been so amazing.
I hope it's been helpful because I can't see you guys and everybody's coming from a different experience. So the questions really, really help not only, provide information that's useful for you, but for everybody who's joined us today. It's really useful.
Yeah. I want to say thank you also to everyone who's brave to ask questions. So that was really
Yes,
so
because
much.
we should talk about our money as women and we should be educated and ask questions.
Yes, thank you so much. And it seems like for next time, it seems like a lot of people have questions based on credit cards, like how
Yeah.
to know what is the impact. It seems like next time there are questions on like investments.
Yep.
And retirement funds. I think those are the main.
I'm going to come with some slides and be able to share what goes into a credit score, how it's configured. I'll have the information about the 0% cards, the quote unquote high yield savings accounts that you can look for online, and some simple examples of investment funds. And if we have time, I can also, if I need to illustrate it, I have some investment accounts that I have view-only access of with no name, so I'm not breaching anybody's privacy, but I could also show you what an investment account can look like.
That would be amazing.
Yeah.
That would be amazing.
So this is great. Well, I hope everybody will come back Sunday for part 2. And while I want to show you some of these things, I'd really love it. Like, come with your questions, come with your issues, come with even the softer side of money, of the emotions or what you might not get about it. And share, share, share.